Hello, I'm Scott Bogie here with Joe Middleton ahead of his upcoming fight against, I'm going to try and pronounce this, Naglis Kanišauskas. How are you doing today?
Kanišauskas, I believe. Yeah,
Hmm?
I'm doing well, thank you. Looking forward to Saturday.
And how do you feel about getting this fight, which is a massive fight for you?
Yeah, it's a big fight, but it's kind of what I wanted, what I asked for. Um, I respect Naglis a lot. Um, Sort of seen him progress throughout his career. He's quite young, so I've seen him make the progress throughout his career in fights in Cage Warriors, and this puts me where I want to be. It's a big fight. His last fight was for the title. So, it's pretty obvious where I'm going if this goes the way I'm hoping it goes on Saturday.
Yeah, I was going to mention that he did just face Dario in Italy, and it was quite a few people had Naglis as getting the victory and becoming the new champ. Obviously, it went the way of Dario. But if you put on that good performance that you know you're capable of, you get him out there, do you feel like that cements you as the number one contender for that belt?
Yeah, I think without question. I mean, um, he had a very close fight with Dario, as you say. I believe it was a split decision.
Yeah,
It doesn't get much closer than that. And, in Dario's home country, I thought he fought well. It was close. I thought Dario actually came on quite well in the later rounds in that fight. But yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that this fight puts me in contention massively. This is where I want to be, and this was pretty much the fight to do it.
and do you feel like being able to get this opportunity from Cave Warriors really early on in your career just shows how much faith they have in your ability?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think so. The reality of the situation is, Naglis has obviously had more professional experience than me,
Yeah,
but I'm, 3 fights deep into my career, 3 finishes.
yeah.
Um, so I feel like, yeah, that probably has given them the incentive to put this together. It's a different paths for different fighters, and it depends on lots of things. For me, I know where I want to be, and I know the sort of time frame that I want to do it in. So for me, as I always say, no risk, no reward. Like this absolutely is a dangerous fight. Naglis is a good, well-rounded fighter who's just fought for the belt. But if you want to be the champion, and I feel I can be, then I should be beating these guys, and that's the way I see it.
And then obviously in your last fight against Craig Rawlings, you were able to get the submission in that last round. Now you completely dismantled him. You were in complete control throughout the whole fight. How did that feel being inside the cage?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. I feel like I probably could have got him out of there a little bit earlier. There was a lot going on that day. It probably wasn't my best sort of post weight cut preparation for a fight. I lost a bit too much weight, and then I was actually ill, sort of the night before the fight, quite violently ill. But no excuses. At the end of the day, a fight's a fight. People turn up to train when they're ill,
Yeah.
and what's the difference? But yeah, I'm happy with the performance. I was happy that I was able to sort of take minimal damage, really, and get another submission finish. I would have been disappointed if I didn't finish Craig, um, and that's nothing against him, but I wanted to keep that 100% sort of finish rate going. I'm a grappler. So I think you can get away with being an exciting striker and maybe win a few decisions. But really, as a grappler, I feel like you need to be getting the finishes to be sort of considered exciting, whether that's fair or not.
And you obviously did then before that you had your debut on the September card in last year. Now you did have a wee bit time to wait. You had two fights scheduled before then to make your Cage Warriors debut, which
Mm.
obviously fell through. How good was it to be able to finally get that opponent, stick with that opponent, and make that debut finally?
Well, I mean, to be fair, even Juan Arasti was actually a replacement. So both our opponent, I think he was supposed to fight Mitch Good, who I think is fighting on Saturday also.
Yeah,
Mitch, I think, got injured, and my opponent also got injured. So they threw us together in sort of, I think it was maybe 2 weeks' notice. But at that point, I just wanted to fight. I mean, I was just happy to finally get the opportunity. It's difficult, I think, early on, especially in your career. You wanna have the right fights to sort of level you up, but you also want to fight regularly, and that can be difficult these days, getting opponents, and obviously injuries are part of the sport. But I went through a bit of a tough patch where I just had opponents dropping left and right, even before I signed with Cage Warrior. So I was just happy to get that done, and I'm happy that I'm now seemingly a little bit more active as well. Cage Warriors are sort of facilitating that, getting me on the shows, which I'm very happy about.
and do you feel like it helps having Cage Warriors knowing that they do have a lot of different shows? They've also got this one coming up, but then they have, I think it's Newcastle once they confirmed, but I hear there's another one on in running. London, I think, is coming back in November. You have Rome that's been announced as well. So they
Yeah,
just have,
October.
they give you a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. I think Cage Warriors, at the end of the day, is a massive platform. Everybody knows that so many fighters have gone from Cage Warriors onto the UFC. Like you say, they have a lot of shows. They have a big roster, so there's a lot of people that they have to match. But it is nice knowing that you're going to have opportunities to fight throughout the year. Um, Sort of really, I won my first pro fight on like a sort of regional show, and then after that, I've been on Cage Warriors, signed to Cage Warriors ever since. So I don't really know any different, but I can imagine not being signed to Cage Warriors or whichever organization. You want to be relying on your manager to get you regular fights, and that's why it's nice to sort of have a contract in place and know that I'm fighting with this brand, this organization, and they're going to get me this many fights.
And obviously, we have to speak about this because if you win this fight, you're going to be getting that position. October,
Good.
Rome. That is, they've not announced the main event there. I think that's because they're looking to get Dario that title. How would you like to head into enemy territory and fight Dario in Italy? England has got a good record this year in terms of title fights against Italians. Gittins won the
Mm,
retained his title against Alexandro. How would you like to continue that fact?
yeah. So you said it. I take it one step at a time. So for me, I'm looking at Naglis, very dangerous, very
Yeah,
talented opponent. Let's get that out of the way first and see where we go from there. I did see that Cage Roy has just announced Rome, I think early October. Obviously, that's the fight to make, right? If things go well.
yeah,
I feel like Dario is probably one good win, one more defense away from a potential call up. I mean, he's got to be at this point.
yeah.
Um, and he needs the right opponent to fulfill that. So let's see what happens. Um, Maybe after Saturday we can talk more about that. But yeah, that definitely seems like something that could go in that direction. So let's see.
And how has the journey so far? Like, what have you improved on the most since your last fight?
I think just getting better everywhere. I think I'm quite experienced, a lot more experienced than my record suggests. For me, it's just having that sort of that time to work on certain things. I think sometimes when you're in camp, you have 6, 8, 12, whatever it is, weeks that you have in camp where you're sort of preparing for either a certain game plan or you just want to work on the stuff that wins you fights. Whereas in between that is when you can really sort of level up and work on other aspects of your game. But for me, obviously, I've only really shown my grappling so far in Cage Warriors. I think this fight is a good opportunity to showcase a well-rounded skill set. I think I'm going to have to succeed in this fight. Um, so yeah, hopefully I'm able to do that on Saturday. Showcase that I am an all-round MMA fighter and not just a jiu-jitsu guy.
And what do you feel like will be your strengths in this fight?
Well, forward movement and obviously my wrestling. Uh, Naglis. To be fair, I mean Naglis has fought a few grapplers on Cage Warriors and sort of other fights, and they managed to sort of get the win. Will Curry comes to mind, but that was a long time ago. I feel like the blueprint's out there, but of course we're both improving sort of year on year. So for me, I just have to perform to the best of my abilities. I believe that I am absolutely up there and should be in title contention. So just turn up on the night and showcase my skills the best I can.
And do you feel like, obviously Will Curry, he has got that contender series fight, but if he does come back to Cage Warriors, is that a fight that interests you if that belt offer doesn't come?
Sure. I mean, I don't know whether that's a fight that would interest Will at this point. I feel like he's sort of set on getting to the UFC. Um, and it sounds like he's on Contenders again,
Yeah,
right?
he
I
is on the
believe I
contender
saw him
series.
somewhere. Good for him. I think we'll see what happens with that. This is his second opportunity. He's still so young. It would be nice. I very sort of loosely know Will. We've been on shared the mats a couple of times many years ago. It would be good to see him go on to Contender Series, win, and get the UFC contract. I think realistically, if he comes back off of that not being successful again, there's a real discussion to be had about why he should fight Dario because he has a win over Dario.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that. But for me, I'm just looking ahead to what my path is. I'm open to fight anybody. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm not afraid to fight anyone. Hence me at 3-0 taking this fight against Naglis, who I think has 12 fights. So I'd fight anybody. Cage Warriors can put together what they think is a good matchup. It would be a fun fight with Will, both grapplers, similar sort of styles in a sense. So it would be a fun one. But again, I'm rooting for him to get to the UFC, to be honest. So we'll see.
And do you feel like that's what puts you different from other guys in Cage Warriors? I'm not going to name any names, but there is some guys who you feel like they they should be fighting some these other top contenders in that division. However, it doesn't seem like these fights are getting put on. Do you feel like that's the difference between you to them? Is that you are willing to take these fights? You are saying you're not shying away. You're just saying, "Give me them."
Yeah, I don't know. I was keen to get on this card, and there was a few opponents discussed initially, but we didn't really, nothing really materialized. At which point we sort of suggested, well, what about this? And Cage Warriors were happy to facilitate, and obviously Naglis said yes, and here we are, and that's great. Um, I can't speak for other people. I don't really know. I think you do get some nice fights, but I guess it's difficult. Timing's everything. I
Yep.
look at you look at other divisions. Sean Clancy Jr. in the welterweight division, everybody's sort of touting him to go on and make it to the UFC. And there's some nice, interesting fights, in my opinion, for him in that division. Um, but it just will it happen because he's got to be in line for the belt soon, and then at
Yeah.
which point maybe those fights don't happen because the other guys aren't there yet, and it just everything's got to work out. Sometimes it makes sense, and other times it doesn't. So I can't speak for other people, but as I said, I'm not going to shy away from the tough challenges because at the end of the day, it's a good way to gauge where you're at in your career. Also, going into this fight, I'm well aware of what Naglis brings to the table, and win or lose potentially on Saturday, we'll see what happens. But I will learn either way. It kind of you understand more. You do get guys, especially early on in their career, they beat a bunch of
Yeah.
mid-level, let's say, to be nice guys, and you never really know because they don't get tested, and then they get to the big stage and they sort of crumble under the pressure. So I don't really want to be in that position. And no one can say that about me either. When you look at my record, my first fight, I mean, was against an absolute beast, Arthur Jacob. fought recently in Dubai. Guy hits harder than anyone I've ever fought before. Dangerous, dangerous guy. I think he'd had 4 or 5 pro fights at that point. It was my debut, and I won. And then after that, obviously, Arasti in Manchester. I think he'd fought already in Cage Warriors twice. I think he'd had like 5 fights. It was my second fight, and I finished him in like a minute. And Craig was 10 fights deep. So nobody can look at my record and say I'm fighting cans, because I'm not.
Yeah,
And I like it that way. Makes me feel good, when you look at, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Look at boxing. People get built up from 1, 2,
yeah.
3-0 against journeyman, and that's fine. But I just didn't, that wasn't never going to be my path. And I'm happy with that.
I think with Clancy, I think he was trying to get that Burlow fight because he's
Yeah, sure.
main eventing Newcastle. So I'm guessing
That's
he
the fun
fought
fight.
Burlow from
Burlington's
Newcastle.
been on Contender Series,
Yeah.
you know, really good experienced guy. He's the champ now. That's the fun fight. It's just whether both parties would take it. That's something to factor in as well.
And obviously, you're not going to look past Naglis. But is there anyone else in that middleweight division? We've talked about Curry, we talked about Dario. Is there anyone else that you look like you're wanting to fight like in the future? Another fun
No,
matchup?
no, not really. Boring answer. If you asked me that in my debut, I would have still said the champion. At the end of the day, my goal is to be Cage Warriors middleweight champion, get that big gold belt. Fun fight. I think me and Dario would be a great fight, but I have to earn that opportunity because he's the champion. So
Yeah.
other than that, not really looking at anybody. Naglis is a fun fight. He's been in some really cool fights that I've watched, especially recently, obviously, trying to study his game a little bit. So yeah, no, not really. Not looking past Saturday.
Yeah.
But who I'll be calling for if all goes well.
And what has been the toughest fight so far?
Well, that's the difficult one. I think my debut, it wasn't on Cage Warriors, but it was like I said, a local
Yeah.
show. Opponent change. I was going to be fighting another debutant, which makes sense. But then in the end, I ended up fighting Arthur. Didn't really know much about him, but he was tough, tough guy. Ended up getting a finish, which is great. But man, my face looked nice after that fight. Like the guy hit super hard, doing really well. He just fought. So since that fight, run into him in the gym, GB top team a few times. Kind of pals now. We follow each other on Instagram and all that. And he fought on I can't remember the name of the show. It's numbers in Dubai, like 471 FC or something like that.
I think
He fought
971 FC.
971, is it? Did you say? Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. He fought the double champ from UAE Warriors, who had like a good record, and took him to the absolute limit. I mean, it was an absolute dogfight war, and the guy's just tough as nails. And for me to have beaten him in my debut, very proud of that. That was a tough fight, and I'll always say that.
So are you training at GB Top Team now?
I am splitting myself between a few different gyms. So I train locally. I do my jiu-jitsu at Novo
Yeah.
BJJ, which is I live on the coast. So for me, it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours commute to GB Top Team. So I try and go up once a week and mix it with the boys. Obviously, Brad and Ash have got a lot of guys on Cage Warriors, and
Yeah.
obviously like the UFC as well. So it's just a great gym, lots of bodies, get to work with some really experienced guys, and it's nice to be in that big gym environment sometimes where you get different rounds every week. Um, Steve Hill, my teammate from Novo, is also fighting on this card, and we get great training in together. But we know each other's game. We've been training together a long time, so for me, sometimes it's just nice to get different looks and learn from different coaches. I think Brad's like fantastic. So, um, yeah, and of course, also John Hathaway, sort of like my main MMA coach, who I regularly train with as well. So a little bit of everywhere. But like I said, I try and dip into GB Top Team when I can to take those good vibes.
Make sure you guys tune in on this weekend where you can see Joe cement himself as the number one contender in that middleweight division. And
Yes.
Dario, if you're watching, you better watch out. He's coming for you. Is
That's
there
it.
anything you want to add or anyone you want to shout out?
No, just shout out all my teammates. Thanks for the help preparing. Everybody that bought a ticket to come and watch me. Looking forward to putting on a show on Saturday. And yeah, I'm sure we'll be speaking afterwards.
Definitely. Can't wait to see you.